and welcome to the Paletteful Packs YouTube channel. My name is Alice and I have the July Paletteful Packs Premier Pack here in front of me. I am so excited to see what's inside, so let's go ahead and open it up. So the first thing that I'm seeing in here is this set of graphics aqua pens. So this is the Metropolitan 6 set, and what these graphics aqua pens are is they are dye-based and they're water soluble. So basically they're watercolor pens, and because they're water-based, they're really low odor and they're super bright, and you can basically use them as regular markers, so to draw or color lines, use for solids. But you can also blend and spread the color using like a damp brush because they're water-based, so you can use that to lighten the colors or add shading and all of that. So they'll work great on watercolor paper. They're also double-ended, so one end has like a bullet nib or a contour point on it, and then the other side has a flexible brush nib. So that is awesome. So there's another set of graphics aqua pens in here as well. This is the Mega Mash 12 set. So same pen, same formula, but 12 different colors, a bunch more colors. And together these actually both retail for $44.98. So the next thing that I'm seeing in here is this Sakura Micro Perm 0.35 millimeter pen. So basically it's a permanent ink pen with a micro point so you can draw ultra fine lines. Because it's permanent, it will actually write on most surfaces, and it's really quick drying and super waterproof, which is going to be great for use with these water-based markers. The ink is also low odor and non-toxic, so nothing to worry about there, and it has a protected tip that will not split. So that's awesome. These retail for $2.79. The next thing that we have in here is a Sakura Koi water brush. These have a 9 milliliter water reservoir, and then the brush size is a number 8 round. So I love the Koi water brushes because the brush actually separates into two parts. So there is a flexible brush tip on one end and then a barrel handle, and the barrel handle actually has a plug. So you can carry water, put it into two, and then throw it in your bag. So it's definitely super portable. And these retail for $7.49. So the last thing that I see in here is this B paper sketchbook. So this is a 6x6 square sketchbook. It's their mixed media pad, and it's their super deluxe like professional series, and it has 93-pound paper. So this paper is made for mixed media, and it's a natural white. And the thing that's really interesting about it is that the sheets all have two distinct surfaces. So each side is slightly different. So the top side of the sheet has more of a tooth to it. So it's great for dry media, or it works well as a cold pressed watercolor sheet. And then the bottom side is more tailored towards pen and ink, or it will work as a hot press sheet for watercolor and other mixed media. So the bottom side is a lot smoother than the top side, and both sides of this should work well with the aqua pens. So we're gonna experiment and see which one works best for my style and the way that I draw. Okay, so this is everything that came in the July 2019 Premier Pack for the graphics aqua pens. I can't wait to try out all these unique supplies, so I'm gonna make a little sketch and then I'll be back to do some swatching and demo out these supplies. Alright, so the first thing that I'm going to do, as with all my Paletteful Packs boxes, is I'm going to swatch all the colors. And then I'm going to play around with some different techniques and ways that I can use these markers and figure out how they work on the paper and how they work with each other and all the different supplies. That way I kind of have an idea of how I'm going to use them once I go in on my actual piece. This was testing everything on the rougher side, and then this was the smoother side, the more hot pressed side. I ended up preferring the side that was a little bit rougher, so that's the one that I decided to work on, and this is just kind of me testing out all of the different colors. So for my picture that I was going to work on, the first thing that I did was I went in with the line art. I'm not a huge line art person, so I decided to go with a little bit more of a sketchy and loose look. I thought that would work well with the markers as well. I did the line art beforehand so that I could really test how waterproof this pen was and see if it would smudge at all with any of the colors. That was an issue that I didn't have at all, so I can let you know that the pen did live up to its promises. It is very waterproof. The pen was also a really dark black, which was great. As I was finishing up the outlines, I started to think about the color scheme of this piece and the specific colors that I wanted to use. So I had drawn these eucalyptus leaves in the background and a little bit in the foreground, so I knew that green was going to feature heavily, and I ended up deciding to use a lot of yellow as well. So when I started out with the base layer of this piece, I started out with a lot of yellows and some greens to establish some lighting and some shading and gradients kind of stuff in the background. So I started out with some of the yellows, and I probably should have blended the green into this lighter yellow and then skipped this more orangey yellow or put it down a little bit further, but I kind of messed up a little bit there, so I just kept working with it to make it work. So the first layer that I did was I very loosely put down the markers, and then I actually sprayed it with some water to blend them even more. So once those were dry, that first layer was dry, I went back in with the same pens to build that color up even more, to blend it even more, and to make that background really bright and saturated. I also went back in with that more orangey color to try to blend it in a little bit more, since it was definitely a little bit darker than I expected it to be, and I think that worked out pretty well as well. So I just kind of alternated between layering down the marker, putting on some water to blend it, or blending in with other markers as well, because they are water-based, so you can kind of blend them with other markers without even using a brush pen. So that is really helpful, and that was a technique that I used a lot. I also tried some wet on wet techniques in this as well, and was just really playing around with techniques. So I used the spray technique again for these little flowers on her crop top, just to make them look a little bit softer and more vintage, and then using the regular technique of laying down marker and then adding in some water just to soften it up a little bit. For the hair, I used the marker as a more traditional marker, since markers are great for creating those beautiful brushy hair strokes, especially obviously the brush-tipped markers. I didn't really have to do too much in the way of blending with this, but I decided to start working from dark to light. I found that was the most effective way to work with these markers, especially for the hair. And so I started with the really darker browns and then slowly layered up so that she had this really fiery orange hair. And then I did add in a little bit of water just to soften up everything, but since the marker had been laying down for a little bit, it did more of a softening and less of a total blend, which was great because that was what I was looking for. I didn't want to lose that detail. The skin was a little bit trickier. I ended up mixing a light yellow and a light pink to create a kind of basic light fair skin tone, and then I added in a couple other colors to try to create a little bit more depth in that. Because there was so much yellow light, I figured it was okay for her to be really kind of orange and sort of be glowing with that light. So I just embraced the slightly unusual skin tone, and I actually think it came out kind of cool. So I was happy with that. I built up some blush on the cheeks as well with a darker pink, and I used a little bit of the blue-gray to add in some shading, although I think that I probably wouldn't have done that in hindsight. I then added in lots of details. The really fine tips made it so easy to add in details such as the lips and the eyebrows, and continue to build up some of the shadows with that darker brown. As you can see, there are a bunch of different ways and techniques that you can use these pens. So the one that I used obviously the most was just laying them down and then blending them into other markers, either using the marker or using the water brush. But as I mentioned before, I did try some wet on wet techniques, which enabled me to get a much lighter color. Because it's water and they're water-based markers, sometimes the tip gets a little light when you do that, but just storing them, waiting a couple minutes, and then the ink reflowed, and that makes it so that it's easier to get a more pastel light color. You can also kind of wet the paper and just drop the ink in to create some really nice wet on wet star spreading kind of fun effects. That way I played around with that in my sketchbook, and really I found a great way to work was to just lay down color and then immediately blend it with the water brush, as I'm doing right now in the eucalyptus leaves. You can see that I have them in both hands and I'm just constantly switching between the two of them. That way I can blend the marker while it's still as wet as possible, and I'll get the nicest blend. These markers were really, really fun to work with, and the colors were super, super bright and pigmented. All their markers were juicy, and one of the things that I really loved was how the brush tip was really well shaped, and it really doesn't fray or bleed or anything like that. To finish up this piece, I added in some pastel pencil over the top that I got from a previous Paletteful packs box, as well as a little bit of white pen to define the centers of the eucalyptus leaves, and that was pretty much it. I really enjoyed working with these supplies. The koi water brush was great. I always love those. And the little square sketchbook is so wonderful. I'm excited to carry this around with me and try other mediums on this surface since it is a mixed media. I hope that you did enjoy this video, that you found it helpful, that you learned something, and that you're excited to go and try your Paletteful pack. I hope that you love the July box as much as I did, and thank you so much for watching this video. If you would like to subscribe to Paletteful Packs, make sure to hit the link down below and check out the website, and subscribe to our channel to see whenever we upload new unboxings and demos. Have a great day. Bye!